Welcome back to the Uniquely Wired podcast. I'm your host, Anani, and I am so excited that you're here today. If you are new to the podcast, on this podcast, we uncover the beauty and uniqueness of autism. So today we have a very special guest. My girl, Kayla Castro. She is reporting live from
Orlando,
Florida. Yes,
Florida.
Orlando, Florida. I'm so jealous. Okay. Because it is cold over here. Like it's already cold.
I wish it was cold here. It is hot and humid here. So
Really?
humid. It's more
Even at this
humid.
time?
Yes. So, like, it's a little bit different from other years, but it's
Okay.
so humid here. It
Yeah.
literally feels like it's like July.
Oh, that
It's the
sucks.
worst.
How about around December though?
It depends. Last
Okay.
Christmas, it wasn't hot. It was pretty chilly, but the year before we went to the beach on Christmas. So
Wow.
it just
So that's
depends.
hot. Yeah. True.
It really just depends.
Well, today, on this episode, of course, it's a special one, and we're going to focus on autism and traveling. Of course, Kayla is an autism mom herself, and she's going to introduce herself shortly and tell us a little bit of who she is and why she started, what she does. So let's just start with who is Kayla.
So obviously my name is Kayla. And I live in Orlando, Florida with my husband, Chris, who is a veteran, and our two boys, Tristan and Ethan. Tristan is 13. He is my son with autism. And then my 9-year-old Ethan is neurotypical. And yeah, we moved here from Southern California for my husband's dream job. So we've been living here for like almost 4 years now. And besides doing travel for all of my families and my clients, I'm actually a one-on-one paraprofessional as well at an elementary school. I work with a little girl with Down syndrome, and she is pretty much nonverbal. So I've been able to learn about the AAC device and use that daily with her, which has been super beneficial for me to learn because Tristan didn't need an AAC device. Or I shouldn't say that he didn't need one because he did need one, but when he was younger, those were not available to us. He was diagnosed with autism a long time ago, and he's been, he's 13. So way back when, 10 years ago, it wasn't a thing. So, but yeah, I'm an autism mom, and I help families travel with special needs. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I love that because who else, can talk about traveling with special needs, or autistic children than someone who is in that journey. And you're also working with a girl who has Down syndrome, so you can also speak on that. And that's a beautiful thing. And I love that. I love your transparency. I love how real you are. And by the way, I got to meet Kayla, just a little backstory real quick. I got to meet Kayla this summer in August at the Moments of Joy Fest, which, if you're not familiar with it, it is an event where Camille Joy celebrates special need families, not just autism families, but special needs in general. So it was such an honor to have Kayla and have her obviously stay in my room because we supported each other emotionally, mentally. Like, we were really there for each other. We have very vulnerable moments. She
Right.
had to see me during a very vulnerable moment. So I'm just grateful that she wasn't judging. We had a beautiful time. I remember you
Yeah.
were emotional about your son starting his social skills class, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And I
And
had
she
to
was
miss
so
it.
sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it's beautiful that we got to share those moments.
Yeah, I think the best thing is that you and I had kind of like established a relationship before we had even gotten to Colorado. And so then when we finally got to meet in person, I remember we like ran up to each other and, hugged each other so tight because it was like you're finally meeting somebody that like you love already and you understand each other's language. You know what I mean? Like it's a foreign language that we speak, the special needs parents language. And so it's nice to just meet somebody who completely gets you. Like you understood exactly why I was so upset that I was missing Tristan's social skills class, and I understood why you were so upset, when you had your obstacle too. And we just come from, like we just get each other, and that is the best thing that this community has ever brought me, was other parents that just get me and I get them.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing and I love it. So I'm so excited to dive into this topic of autism and traveling, especially for those parents. For myself, I don't really travel, but
Yeah,
eventually, I should
right.
say, I will want to.
Mhm.
So I'm taking tips myself, but also those parents that are listening that do travel a lot and really don't have any tips and they're struggling and they're having challenges. This is a great episode for you. But again, also for those that are planning to start traveling or
Right.
have never traveled because you have fears. This is a great episode for you as well. So I'm going to start off with a question. Can you share your experience with traveling as an autism mom? And what motivated you to become a traveling agent? Because I know that's what you do aside from being a one-on-one.
Right. So, you know, Chris and I, so my husband is a Marine. He's not active duty anymore, but we had to travel a lot when he was active duty, going back and forth to Virginia, going back and forth to North Carolina, from California. And at that point, Tristan had not been diagnosed yet, but I knew that there was an obstacle. And so I was, scared to go on airplanes with him and scared to fly that far with him, especially by myself, because when we were traveling, it was just me and Tristan, and we were traveling to go see my husband because we didn't exactly move with him yet. I stayed with family so I could have help, because even though Tristan wasn't diagnosed, I knew. And that was hard, traveling with him when he was so young. And even though, like I said, he wasn't diagnosed, I knew. And it just kind of grew from there. We while I did that, I learned some stuff that worked for him and I learned some stuff that didn't. And then it just kind of grew as he got older. And then we, started to go to Mexico, and then we went to the Dominican Republic, and then we started doing some domestic travel. And then we started going to like super large theme parks, like Universal Studios and Walt Disney World, and, doing that thing. And then we started going on cruises, and it was like it just continued to evolve. The more and more we traveled with him, the more we learned. The more we learned what not to do, because not everything was perfect. Just because you're going on vacation doesn't mean you're in this bubble where nothing can happen. And sometimes your resources or your accommodations don't work out the way that you think they're going to work out. That's just, plain and simple. Like you have this plan and it can totally go out the window, and so we learned a lot just taking the chance to travel with him. We wouldn't have learned those things if we didn't travel with him. He wouldn't have learned things for himself if he hadn't traveled. I think he kind of, especially being older now, and even when he was younger, like 7, 8 years old, he learned things about himself when we were traveling. And now I take those things that we've learned and give them to other special needs families. Does it work for everyone? It might not, but it might work too. You don't know unless you try. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that I go through this too, and I've been there too, so I can tell you what works and what doesn't work for us. Um, and when I became a travel agent, I'm going to be very honest. When I very first became a travel agent, I didn't plan on doing special needs travel. It wasn't something that I had even thought about. I didn't even think that, people would want to listen to me, I guess. You kind of have this like imposter syndrome when you're doing this whole social media thing, and you're like, oh, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to listen to me. I'm just one person. Um, but I started sharing about Tristan and our journey. And, people saw us in Tortola, British Virgin Islands, and then they saw us in the Grand Cayman Islands. And, I was sharing those experiences, and people were like, oh my gosh, your son is autistic. Like, how do you travel with him? And I was like, wow, and it was more than just one message or two messages. It was a lot of people who were coming to me asking me these questions. And I was like, you know what? I can totally help these families. I can show them, what's worked for us and what hasn't, and send them resources and accommodations to the places that they want to travel to, so they know what is available to them. And then it honestly just kind of trickled from there. And once
Mm.
it started trickling, it just kind of overflow to helping special
I
needs
love
families.
that.
So,
Wow. Now, if we may go back, when you
mhm,
mentioned you didn't even know, well, he didn't have a diagnosis just
right.
yet, but you
Hmm.
knew. So
Yeah.
what were some of those signs, and how old was Tristan around that time, if you don't mind sharing that?
So Tristan was 2.5. He was 2.5. Um, Hand flapping was a big thing. Stimming, like he would go onto like the hardwood floor, and he would specifically go put like sweatpants on, and then he would come down to the hardwood floor and get on his knees, and he would spin and spin and spin and
Mm,
spin and spin. And then he would just get up and walk away. Like, he wasn't even dizzy, nothing. But he
mm,
would just spin and spin and spin, hand flapping, um,
yeah. So lots of
verbally.
repetitive behaviors.
Oh, 100%. It was
Mm,
all of the characteristics that were being talked about 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago,
mm,
they were talking about hand flapping, repetitive behavior, um,
mm-hmm.
categorizing toys like in a
Yeah.
row or in a line. Like, there
Mm,
weren't that many signs
early
as
signs.
right
Yeah.
as people talk about now. So
Mm-hmm.
back then, 10 years ago, 10 and a half years ago, that's what was talked about. And then, of course, his speech, like, he wasn't verbal.
Mm,
He was nonverbal, and I could tell that he wanted to speak. He would kind of do like this,
mm,
like jarble. He
mm-hmm.
would, he would hit because he was, trying to
Frustrated.
communicate, and he couldn't, and he was super
Mm,
frustrated. And so, but he would also hit when he was excited, because he would
mm.
just, like, he would just get so excited he didn't know how to tell anybody that he was excited, you know
Right.
um,
Right.
so those are like the
Mm,
main things that I saw that I knew. I just knew. I would tell everybody, and
yeah.
everybody would say, no, he's just a boy. He's just a late bloomer, and give him some time. And I
Of
was like,
course.
no, no, I know. I know.
So you knew about autism. You knew what autism was at that time.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So
Um,
that makes sense.
yes. So I did, because I'm a type A person, so I like organization. I like learning about things to a T, which is
Yeah.
probably why I'm a travel agent. I like doing all the
Perfect.
research, doing all the research and everything. And so
Uh-huh.
originally, when he started showing these signs, I thought it was ADHD or something, you know?
Mm.
And so I started looking into that. And then when I was researching ADHD, I came across autism spectrum disorder. And then I remember reading like a paragraph from an article and I was like, this is it. This is it. And then just
Wow.
deep diving into all about autism,
Mm.
and going to the doctors, and the doctors at that time, they would not diagnose a child with autism, at least in California at the time, until they
Mm.
were at least 5, I believe it was.
Wow, I
Um,
do remember hearing this.
Yes, they weren't
Yeah.
they weren't doing that, like, they weren't even considering it.
Mm.
And so I felt so, about it,
Wow.
and so then
Yeah.
I treated it as if I knew,
Mm.
"All right, fine, this is what he
Wow.
has, and I'm just gonna go on with it."
And you went forward and you got the help and,
Yeah.
because we know early intervention, um, I'm sure that still existed then at that time, right?
Yes, yeah, we did. We did,
Okay.
and I fought for it through his school because, in public school in California at that time, we did have quite a few resources.
Mm.
And so I fought for those resources through the public school, and he got
Wow.
them. Even starting in
Wow.
preschool. Preschool is when he
Mm.
started the speech therapy, occupational therapy, the
Yeah.
behavioral therapy. Yep.
Wow.
Mhm.
And I'm just amazed because I see him. He's such an amazing young man.
Thank
Like,
you.
just see him. First of all, he's your twin. I think he looks just like you. And, he's so handsome and
Thank
so
you.
intelligent. I mean, he's just always, I could tell he's very literal about things when he speaks, but I
100%.
love it. I'm in it all the time. Every time you put him on your stories. So, guys, please, you have to follow Kayla. I'll have her information in the description because I love when she shares about her kids and the testing Tuesday and all the things. It's just so tasting Tuesday. Sorry,
Yeah, the Taste
correction,
Test
tasting
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yes, I love it. But all right. So my next question is: traveling with autistic children or special needs children in general can be super challenging.
Mhm.
What are some common misconceptions or stereotypes you've encountered, and how did you address them? And this could be from a special need family, from a client, or even yourself. Some misconceptions and stereotypes.
So I think the biggest thing is that when clients come to me, they don't realize that there are resources and accommodations out there for them at specific places that they want to travel to.
Mm.
Um, So people think, oh, well, that's only for like a neurotypical family. They're not going to be able to accommodate me. Or, a lot of people don't know that like beaches, all inclusive resorts are certified autism centers. And so they think that all inclusives are just for neurotypical families or that they can't visit them themselves, and they have no idea that these places are actually, their whole staff is actually trained to work with and help you take care of your special needs family. So I think the biggest misconception out there about travel is that there are no resources and no accommodations for you, and that you're just going to have to figure it out on your own. Um, that's the biggest thing I can think of, because people come to
Yeah.
me all the time and they're like, we really want to go here, but we don't think it's going to work. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you think it's going to work? Well, what happens if, he is very, picky with his food and he only has a certain amount of seafoods? It's like, okay, well, this place, whichever the place it is, works with special needs families, and they will make sure that they have, your safe foods on hand, or they will allow you to, box up your food and take it to go. You don't have to eat it in the restaurant, or,
Mm.
whatever the situation may be. The biggest misconception is that special needs families like us don't know about the resources and accommodations when they're traveling. Even as
Yeah.
simple as going on an airplane, there are accommodations for that as well. And
Mhm.
people don't know that, and that is their biggest fear, you know.
Mm. It is. I can attest to that, because
Mhm.
I think that's one of our biggest fears as well, and still is. So
Yeah.
you saying this brings so much peace. But I
Mm.
think also partnering with a travel agent like yourself,
Mhm.
who's also an autism mom, I feel like I can go to you and be like, look, Kayla, this is where we're looking to stay around the spring. What is the best place? And I think it's just, again, finding that right person that has traveled. Because if it ain't Kayla, I mean, who you going to? Just saying. Um, I'm just saying, especially those of you who are special need families that are
Mhm.
listening, my autism families, check Kayla out. If you are wanting to really go see family in Florida, I don't know, California, since she is familiar with California, anywhere, she'll do the research for you
Mhm.
and you don't have to worry about a thing.
Right.
I mean, as an autism mom yourself, we're always going to have all these extra questions
Yes.
and all these
Yes.
concerns and
Yes.
uncertainties that are going to pop up,
Mhm.
but we cannot allow those things to stop us from traveling and our children exploring the world,
Right, right.
right?
I think the biggest thing is that, we in the autism community, we talk so much about wanting inclusion, throughout the entire world. We want inclusion, but in order to allow the world to see our children, we need to expose them, and that's where the inclusion comes from. Expose your child to the world, expose the world to your child, because that is how we're going to fight for inclusion. If we're, you know, uh, you know, not doing that, then how would these companies or businesses know, that
Right.
they need to make their
Hmm.
establishments more
Hmm.
accommodating for guests like us to feel comfortable and
Yes,
confident to travel to them. And
exactly.
that's a
Hmm.
huge thing.
And I think, you mentioning this, obviously, your stuff. You've done your research. You've had plenty of clients. So she's not just saying this to say it and make you feel good. She's saying
Yeah.
this because she knows it's a fact and it's true.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that, for sharing that. Um, because that brings me a lot of peace. I know I definitely want to go see my dad who lives in Florida, not far
Hmm.
from Orlando.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, okay, do I go on my own? But I also want him to meet his grandchildren, his only grandkids. So it's like, do we wait until the springtime, until they're on spring break in April to take that trip that week? So I'm definitely going to be reaching out to you just to see what we can do and,
Right.
prices and all the things. But
Yeah.
that will be a conversation. Pending. Okay. Next question. We have two more questions. What are the key considerations that autism families should keep in mind when planning a trip? Like, what are those key things?
So the key things are location and flying. Those are the two things that come to mind for me is what location do you want to go to? And depending on that location, are you willing to fly or do you want to drive? This is for special needs families that are just now starting to consider to travel. I don't think that if you are nervous about traveling, that you should just pick up and go to Europe, with your child. Start small. Start maybe in your own state. Do domestic travel. Stay close by. Try a road trip where it's a couple of hours away first. Stay a few nights at maybe, the Great Wolf Lodge or, some fun resort and try that first and see how it goes, and then move on to if you want to fly to another state. Another thing to think about is cruising. You know, I 100% think that cruising is so much fun and the way to go for autism families, especially because everything.
Elaborate.
So With cruising, you feel you're on vacation and you go to these different places, but your room is right there. So if they need to, you know, regulate and just, calm and have some time to themselves, or maybe they're having a meltdown, you don't have to, take an Uber all the way back to your resort or take, some kind of transportation back to your resort, or maybe you were exploring a city somewhere and you got to
This
walk
is
all the
good.
way. What?
Yeah, this is good stuff. What
Yeah,
you're saying
no.
right there.
So, like, if you're on a cruise and you need some time, your stateroom is right there.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm,
comforting place is so close.
mm,
There's water. We know that, autism, kids with
yes.
autism, most of the time sensory, they love being in the water. There's pools, there's water slides, there's splash pads, and then everything on the ship is very structured. You have a
Mm,
breakfast time, you have a lunch time, you have a dinner time, there are activities in between. And
mm.
every single day you have a schedule that you don't have to follow to a T if you don't want to. That's the blessing
Okay.
of it. But it's very structured. And you know what you're going to do, you have it planned out for you right then and there. So it's just nice because you don't have to worry about all of this planning. You don't have to worry about figuring out what to do at the last minute. You're super close by to your room if you need to go take a breather, or maybe take a nap or whatever it is that you need to do. But then also those cruises take you to new places. So then you can experience more than just one place. And if it doesn't work out at one place, that's okay because you're only there from like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You didn't spend all this money to go to that one place for like a week, and now you're dreading about being there for 6 more days because your child didn't like it. You're on a cruise, you go there for the day, you get back on the cruise, and then you go somewhere new the next day. So 100%, I just, for my family and for a lot of my clients, cruising has been the way to go. It really has. I feel like I
Wow.
went on a whole other tangent than what you just asked, but people need to know
No.
that.
No, I think that is perfect because guess what? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I thought actually cruising would have been more stressful
Yeah. No, it
because
is.
there's so many people and you're like on the boat and
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've never been cruising. So anyways, I'm just, I guess, overthinking. But that's crazy. Now, financially, because we know that this is a question possibly
Hmm.
parents are asking right now as they're
Right.
listening. Um, is it more affordable than flying and staying somewhere, or do you think it's about the same?
It depends on where you're going.
Okay.
So, and it also depends on like the cruise line that you want to go with. Royal Caribbean and Disney Cruise Line are absolutely amazing. Those are the two cruise lines that I personally love to book. I have booked Carnival in the past, and I know that people look at Carnival sometimes because it's more budget friendly, but I'm just going to be very transparent and honest. I don't love Carnival. And my clients that have booked Carnival have booked it because it was more affordable. And then they got off and they were like, we didn't like it. No Carnival for us. We rather
Oh.
pay the extra money to get better customer service and better ships and amenities and all of the things. So I no longer book Carnival because of that. It's not serving my clients. So then I just won't go through with it anymore. Royal Caribbean and Disney Cruise Line are absolutely amazing. Of course, Disney Cruise Line is more expensive, but in this sense, it's you get what you pay for. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
with Disney Cruise Line as well, it's kind of like an all inclusive. Everything is
Mm,
completely included. All of your food, all of your drinks, everything.
Right,
Whereas
right.
with Royal Caribbean, you actually have to pay extra to get like certain drink packages. So
Mm.
so sometimes I can do a quote for Disney Cruise Line for a family and then do a quote for Royal Caribbean, and Royal Caribbean is more expensive than Disney in some
Mm.
instances. And then when it
Okay.
comes to like flying and staying in a hotel somewhere, it genuinely just depends on where you're trying to go. If you're trying to fly further away and go to a hotel, it could definitely be more expensive than a cruise, or it could not. It genuinely just depends on where you want to go and then what activities you want to do while you're there.
Yeah, like I know for us, I definitely want to try SeaWorld. I don't know
Okay.
that I'll do Disney.
Mhm.
Just knowing my children anyways, not that it's anything wrong with Disney, but
Yeah.
some people get really defensive about Disney and I'm like, I mean, I don't have anything against it. I just, I went as a child. When my parents were married, we were living in Florida and my mom used to do housekeeping in Florida. I mean,
Yeah.
in Disney, and one of my aunts still works there.
Mhm.
So I trust me, I don't have nothing against it. I just my children literally watch. I mean, that I could think of the top of my head, they don't really watch anything Disney. So
Okay.
I feel like it will be a waste for me. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to take your kids somewhere that first of all they know
Yes.
nothing about.
Yes.
Second of all, I mean, are they really going to be excited? If anything, they're going to be overwhelmed.
Right.
And again, this is my case. I know some
Mhm.
parents, their kids love Disney.
Right.
Granted, I used to love Disney Channel when I was a kid, and I wish I had the advantage to go more often. But I think SeaWorld is beautiful, and I
Mhm.
feel like Eliana, like you were saying, some kids who are autistic love water,
Mhm.
and I remember when I took them to Dutch Wonderland this summer. I don't know if you saw my stories, but
Yes, I did.
she literally, I was so shocked. They had a section that reminded me just like SeaWorld. The only thing is humans
Mm.
jumping versus dolphins. We're grabbing Rita's and she grabs my hand, Kayla. Literally, I can't even make this up. She wanted to go in there to see the performance.
Oh. Oh my
I
god.
was like, I looked at my husband and I was like, babe, she wants to go to watch the show.
Yeah.
Never in a million years that I think Eliana, especially at her age, being 7, that she
Right.
wanted to go watch a show.
Right.
Like, what?
She knew what
Sometimes
she
we
wanted.
underestimate our children.
Yes.
Yes.
She
So,
knew
girl,
what
she
she
sat
wanted.
there. They splashed her with water when they jump, and she jumped like this, but then she got so excited and flapped her hands like she loved it. And
Oh.
that to me it was like, okay, well, if she loves this, I'm sure she's gonna love, SeaWorld. Seeing the
Yeah.
dolphins jumping, she's not gonna care if they splash her. So I don't know. I have to speak with you because I would like to see what type of accommodations, we can do for sure.
Yeah, and
Um,
SeaWorld is a certified autism center with the IBCCDS
yes,
as well. And then they have
yes,
their Sesame Street land area, and there's a quiet
yeah,
room over there. And yeah, we've
yeah.
been there many times. We actually go every summer because
Oh,
it's one of Tristan's favorite parks. And
really?
yes, and so
Oh.
it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It's a good
that's
time.
that's amazing. That's amazing. All right, friend. I know you have to go very soon. So my last question would be, what advice can you give those families that have been wanting to travel but are afraid of doing so?
I think the biggest advice is to start doing your research. Figure out where you would like to go. Reach out and see what kind of resources and accommodations are available for those places. And like I said before, you will not know unless you try. And I'm not saying that if you are terrified of doing that right now to just go out and do it. That's not what I'm saying. I don't ever want anyone to feel that way. What I'm saying is if you have a dream of going somewhere, start talking to your kiddos about it, because they understand more than we give them credit, and show them videos of places that you want to go to and see their reactions and see if they get excited, or if they're just not having it. And then look into those places and see what kind of resources and accommodations they have for you and your family, so you can feel a little bit more at peace while thinking of actually traveling to these places. Um, like I said before, we want to, expose our children to the world, but expose the world to our children. And, I read this quote that I talk about it all the time on social media because it really did have an effect on our traveling with Tristan. And that's, a ship is safe in a harbor, but that's not what ships were built for. And that gets to me every time because it's so true. But yeah, once you get to a point to where you're like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm willing to try. That's a good starting point. And like I said, it doesn't, just because, you want to start traveling with your special needs kiddo doesn't mean that you need to take off to Europe for a week, start small and then work your way up because with Tristan, it was flying domestically and going to little places here and there. And it wasn't, until we felt like he was comfortable that we, started taking him to the Grand Cayman Islands or,
Yeah.
Tortola, British Virgin Islands. Like
Mm-hmm.
then it just got a little bit better. But
Yeah.
you have to
Mm-hmm.
start
Yeah.
small, feel confident, feel at peace, and then
Mm-hmm.
you'll get there. Like it'll come.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, trying those local places within your area. Like we did Dutch Wonderland. That first night, it was hard for Jacob because with Jacob, it's his sleeping um challenges. With him, it was more like, okay, I'm looking for my own space because my kids are so used to just sleeping in their own rooms that we were just in one room together. And we noticed that that was a challenge and we couldn't do another night, and I think that's another thing that kind of like stops us and we become so hesitant because we're like, literally, I had the swing chair for him, everything that I know would soothe him. And it took him a while. We literally had to drive around the hotel so they both fell asleep. Because obviously Eliana too, she sleeps on her own. She does a little better than he does, but we're like, hopefully if we try again, we got to figure something out when it comes to like him falling asleep. Maybe tired him out the entire day until he's like, I'm ready to be out. So it's just it's some concerns, but I love that you said that, how will you know if you don't try? So trying locally, do it.
Yeah. And I've had clients, like you guys where, your child sleeps on their own and they're used to that. And so we might look into like a hotel, not a big crazy deluxe hotel, but we might look into a hotel that has like a 2 bedroom, option or a 3 bedroom option, so they can have their own room and, have their own space. Of course, it's in a different environment. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always nerve-wracking too.
Right.
But, just doing that, will help and it could help, it just depends.
Yeah, and what Kayla is saying for those listening, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
In
It
other words,
is.
anything you get out of this, you're wanting to travel this holiday to see family, and you're really afraid and you rather want them to travel because that's me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just know that it is possible. So plan that next family trip. Go for it.
Yeah.
Do it
Yeah.
afraid.
Don't
Do
be
it afraid.
afraid. Yeah. Do it afraid. Don't be afraid because, I mean, but that's easier said than done. Every time I still travel with Tristan, even being, the travel agent and having the resources and accommodations, sometimes, things just happen and then you have to go with the flow. And that's another thing that you have to take into consideration when you're planning a vacation, even if it's down the street, you're going to stay the night one night, have realistic expectations. Just because you are going on vacation does not mean that your child is not going to have a hard time.
This
Have
is so good.
realistic
Girl, you keep
expectations.
going deeper and deeper. And I'm like, I know you have to go,
we
but that is
we'll have
so good.
we'll have a part 2
I,
coming.
I think we need to have a part two,
I
honestly,
think we need to
because
have a part 2.
just so we can dig a little bit deeper. And you know
Yeah,
what? If questions come, I can always ask the listeners if they have
that's
any
great.
questions for you. I think we can do a
Yes.
Q&A part two
Yeah,
because
I think
this is a very important topic,
mhm.
especially now during the holidays,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, Christmas coming, the new year. I think this is awesome. So
Yes,
there you go.
the best, thank yous that I get from from clients is thank you for helping us do something we never thought we could ever do. That is the best compliment
Oh,
ever
mm,
because, we go out and we think we're never going to be able to do that, especially
yeah,
right now on social media, seeing all these people and all like traveling on social media right now is a huge thing. You see all these people go out and they're traveling and they're in the Grand Canyon and they're here and they're there and they're whatever. And most of the time when you see those videos, they're neurotypical families. And so my job is to show
yes.
you that we are going to those places too. So it's possible. Think happy words. Autism community happy word is yet, because it can happen. It can happen. You just have to, you just got to try.
Yeah, have faith and trust. Like you got this. You guys are
Mhm.
going to be able to get through it. Well, Kayla, I'm so sad to let you go, but you're my girl.
I love you. Part 2
Love you
coming.
more.
Part
Yes, it
2
has to. It
coming.
has to.
If
Yes,
anyone
it
if
has to.
if anyone's listening right now and you have questions, leave them so we can
Yeah.
answer them in our part 2.
Yes, especially if you're watching on YouTube, please drop them in the comments. And if you're listening on other platforms, just reach out to me via
Mhm.
email or DM.
Yep.
So thank you so much for being
Thank
here, Kayla,
you.
for taking out of your time and for your yes. I
Yeah.
am so happy for you and all the things you're doing and what God has in store for you this coming
Thank
year. So
you.
I'm so excited.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in and listening. I'll see you guys again on the next episode.